James is one of my best friends
Yes.
from a long time ago, yay high, growing up in Greenbelt, Maryland. And it's funny to kind of come full circle, where we are now in our lives. But you have a unique perspective because you've been right there along his side as he's explored different things, the passions that he has. And now he is, as a physician, we'll have an opportunity to talk to him about his thoughts about it, but would love to get kind of your perspectives, not only for your relationship with James, but also even your father, who was a physician too. So tell me a little bit more. What's it been like with my friend James? And
Well, he was a playwright, is a playwright still, but
yeah.
when we met, and he pursued that for 5 years when we moved out to Seattle, like in 1992, after college, and I was going to pre-med while he was doing plays and studying, and we had like a 1-bedroom apartment, and his theater group would be rehearsing and I would be in the bedroom studying physics and organic
chemistry. Yes.
Which I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And I got through about 2 years and got pregnant, and that we had thought about having kids, but it wasn't really reality. It was like, we're too young. I couldn't possibly have kids. And then that was like, oh, we could do this. Yeah. And it turned out to be an ectopic pregnancy. But it was that month of thinking that this was a possibility. And after that, it was, do I want to spend 4 years in med school and residency and then have kids and not see them? And at the time, my father had been sick. And I, wasn't sure how long people would be around. And so it was really thinking like, do I want to have that 12-year life investment?
Yes.
So I didn't go to med school. And then James, I had taken a physics class at UW with a teacher I thought James would love. And James was always into, his dad was a solar physicist, and he grew up with science, and
absolutely.
So I was like, well, if you're, he kind of thought, well, maybe I should do it, and I was like, well, take this. You should just take his class and see if you like it. And he took it, and he loved it, and he did well. Yeah. And then we had Griffin, our first son, and he started pursuing it after, evening classes, and and so then we embarked on. It was 13 years from the time he started pre-med. Griffin was 13 when he stopped, when he graduated from fellowship. Yeah. So it was like another
it's a life commitment.
And he missed a lot, It was it's better to do it younger, I think, but.
Well, and I did it older too.
Yeah.
I did research for years because that's where my passion was. But then there was a shift in me that made me decide to do medicine. And it's fascinating to think that, especially now in modern times where physicians maybe don't play the role that they did in the past, but the commitment that a physician has to, they lose out on all of their 20s. Yeah. And when you talk about a family life, I'm amazed you guys aren't divorced.
That's what our pediatrician told. We took Griffin to his pediatrician appointment, and Griffin and James is like, I'm thinking about going to med school. And he's like, 90% of couples get divorced in med school.
Right? Yeah.
I think kids kept us together. Because I was completely, if I had been a single person wanting a partner, he wouldn't have been. I mean, I was busy with 2 kids, so it was just sort of like trying to keep that going, And so I'm not sure not having any kids, it would have been like me sitting around, home at night. Yeah. I can see that happening, but there was too much to do. And so we moved to Charleston to be with near my family because I knew if he was in med school, I'd want help, and that allowed me to have a life. And so I was able to write and do gallery work, and so it was actually the most productive time for me. Excellent. Having that
Yeah.
support system.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we went to residency, that was just all of it. Like,
Felt-
it was back home for me
Mm-hmm.
in Ohio.
Yeah.
But everybody had moved, everyone I knew had moved pretty much. And residency was a lot more
Intense.
painful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the long hours, the misery.
Yeah, we did not see him. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
come home, crap. Every now and then but you couldn't count on him for doing. It wasn't like I could say,
Yeah.
oh, you can pick the kids. There was just never.
Yeah.
We might be lucky to see him early one day or whatever, but it was just constant.
And it's hard for people to appreciate, that, especially when, it's so hard to even connect with a physician anymore. Mm-hmm. The economics of healthcare are such that even me as a family physician, if I worked in a regular practice, usually it'd be a PA, a physician assistant, or a nurse practitioner or a medical assistant who they'd see first.
Right.
And the amount of interaction they'd have with me would be almost nil.
Yeah.
Right? But yet I've committed all of the, really 20s and 30s to hone myself as a physician, all this training, all of this education, for the sole purpose of trying to take care of people. But yet you get out and you find, wait a minute, I can't actually take care of people because the system sucks and it's broken and there are things that need to be done to fix it. But your father, tell me a little bit more about, being the daughter of a physician. What was that like in comparison, maybe, with your relationship with James?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have just a respect and admiration for the medical field. Mm-hmm. I'm always quick to defend when people complain about their doctor. There are some bad doctors out there, absolutely, that deserve to be criticized. But I'm all, like, oh, well, maybe just, I think my own care with doctors has been better because of that. I'm understanding towards people, like my obstetrician. It's like, you were up at 4 a.m. delivering a baby, and now you're in your office from 9 to 5. That's just rough. Like, I don't know how anybody does that.
Yeah.
So I think just growing up with my dad, he was so, patients called the house all the time. I would answer the phone. They would start telling me their problem. Like, no, Dr. Rhodes isn't here. Well, my son's having a problem. And I'm like, I'm 10. He doesn't teach me medicine on the nights, his nights off. So, he did house calls. He did obstetrics. He delivered probably over 1,000 babies. He had a huge obstetrics practice, minor surgery. I mean, it was a rural practice, so he did everything. Mm-hmm. And when he moved to Charleston in his mid-50s, they kind of wanted a pre-retirement move. He was amazed at how they didn't have an X-ray machine, they didn't do casting, they just sent everything out. And he's like, I don't want to I want to do stuff. I don't want to just send everybody out. Yeah. So his office was, he had to just, I want to, buy an X-ray machine, get labs going. I want to do all this stuff. And he would see, the first place he worked, they saw routinely 110 patients, 120 patients a day in a 12-hour period. And he's so good at time management. It's just like, he can do more in a day than anyone I've ever known. And would get people going. And I think they all felt like they had been seen by him and listened to him, because he'd get people, 10 people in a room, go see, get labs on them, get an X-ray, see this person, Yeah. He'd be doing 20 things at once. And
he'd get waist deep in it. He wouldn't just let like a practice manager
Right. So his patients love him, and that's why he's still working at 85, 2 days a week, because they say, I don't know what we're going to do when you retire. I think because he's so invested in he's diagnosed so many people with things that no one else had found, but it's the people that he couldn't figure out that, that weighs on him. And that's what he thinks about. Oh, I missed something. And it's like, you caught 100 other things. Like, don't, he just can't let it go. So it's, I know that wears on him. But he's, it's just who he is. It's just, and I don't know if they make people like that anymore. You know?
Well, and that's a good point, because the way medical education is now, it's kind of just creating factory workers to fill a system that's broken. But for your father's inspired people. Your father has, for James, he really kind of encouraged and pushed him and supported him through that. But also your sister too, right? That had a heavy influence, and that is very much what the legacy is. And that's why we're having this conversation, is because we need to be able to go back in time to the way medicine was. And your father has that unique perspective.
Yeah.
Whereas young physicians have no clue, the 20, maybe 30-year-olds. And without that perspective, big business is just going to consume it more. There aren't going to be independent thinkers. My perspective is a physician is somebody who's curious and has the capacity to care for people, and a mind that can tinker with things enough to diagnose what the condition is, and in the dedication to continue to treat until they get better. And we'd be fascinated to interact with your father and maybe go on a house call with him and learn, peer into his DNA, if you will, a little bit, just to see what he's made of. And he probably won't want to be on camera and those sorts of things. He'll be like, this is hogwash. But
I don't know.
Yeah?
He was a radio and TV announcer when he went. That was one of his jobs. He worked through med school. So yeah, he wanted to be an actor. I think.
Really?
He first went to college for acting.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
He might not mind. He'll be a ham. He might.
We
might steal the show.
I'm hoping we can be a little goofy and just silly.
Yeah, no, he's very funny. He's got a very funny sense of humor.
Okay, that will.
It may not be politically correct all the time.
But you know what? He has license at his age to say. That's the whole thing. At this age now, I can say I don't have anything to prove to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, I will do no harm or anything to anyone, but at the same time, I'm just going to be who the fuck I am. I can't help it. I don't have anything to really prove to anybody, so why not? Just let it all hang out.
Right. Well, when COVID started, I told my dad, I was like, you should do telemedicine. I don't like telemedicine. I want to see the person.
Yeah.
But he's been doing telemedicine since my oldest sister went to college.
Yeah.
Because we would call him, Dad, I've got this.
Yeah.
And he'd always know. And I still trust his opinion over my pediatrician with my kid. I will tell my father, kids are having this, a rash.
Yeah.
I send him a pic. He knows. He just, I still to this day call him over going to the doctor. So I figure I'll be that person who doesn't go to the emergency room when they should. I drop dead of something. Shoot, I should have gone to the doctor. Yeah. It's like, Dad, is this something I should worry about?
Yeah.
No. So.
And my brother's a physician, and everybody has a different style. My brother's a physician who has a clinic in Tampa, Florida, and he went straight from undergraduate to go to medical school and then do his training as an internist.
So he was a little younger.
Younger, and he has his perspectives, and we'll go and visit him as well. There's the origin story of him becoming a physician, and then his influence on me in becoming a physician as well. But we are very different, and I think characters really shine through in terms of what they are like as physicians. My brother's patients love him to death. Yeah. And he's an independent physician just like me, but he won't do a single house call. Yeah. So I'm like, why not? Bed bugs. Bed bugs. Go on, bed bugs.
Bed bug, really?
Oh, yeah. Sister, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. Man.
Sometimes you have to look, where do I put this bag
really?
down?
Yeah.
I'm sure your dad will have things to relate to. Too.
I mean, I say he stopped doing house calls, but friends and family, he always had his bag. He always took his bag with him on vacation.
Yeah.
We had a couple that was very close who were like grandparents to me. He would go over and see them, so really close people. He continues, even they're his neighbors now. Yeah. He goes over and helps them. So he does do it, but it's not like his patients call him, and his patients call him, and he will help him over the, but he's without going there. But
And that's funny because we met with another physician here, and she was talking about doing the same kinds of things for people in her community, friends, and she actually got in trouble with the board because the board said, well, you're practicing in a way that, doesn't fit what the standards are. And it was like, well, I'm a physician, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I know.
We will eventually get back to exploring more of the history. Like we'll go to Kos, the island in Greece where Hippocrates' school is, and we'll visit with physicians in places like Turkey and Germany and Greece and probably UK to get different perspectives. And I think the issue for me is what is someone's thought about health? There's a lot of culture behind it. There's a lot of things that you have to tease out. And, growing up in DC and then serving in Southeast DC, I'd give a call out to my patients. They'd never met me before, and I'd give them a call saying, yeah, I'm coming to your house. I'll be, seeing grandma and taking care of her. And yeah, my name's Dr. Earnest Brown. And I spoke in kind of like a natural DC voice, which is a little bit Southern. Knock on the door. You're white. Why? Between Earnest Brown and the way I would speak and everything, it was like, But part of it was them welcoming me in their home, but also understanding for them, as a physician, you can say, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. But you have to sometimes say, wait a minute, what do they want? And what is their understanding of what health is? Especially in the Southeast, I had a patient 106 years old. She didn't need me.
She managed to get there. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. He said, yeah, I'll just put a balm on this, And I want to explore more of the stories of non-traditional medicine, alternative medicine. We met with a naturopath here. We've also met with a massage therapist. I think institutionalizing medicine has been one of the biggest problems here. And you see other countries looking at what we do and then trying to replicate it back there. And I'm like, wait a minute, no.
The Cleveland Clinic model has become, everybody thinks they're such a success. It's like,
we'll
they're a success because they can dump all the non-insured people to university hospitals in Cleveland.
Yes.
Because they're a public hospital.
Yes.
So you have to have this hybrid public, private, in order for that to work so well. Because Cleveland Clinic hides their emergency room. They do not have a sign. Like, it's hard to find their emergency room.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't want you to find their emergency room.
And
they would like to fly the Dubai princes in and get their money, but they don't really want to deal with it.
Yeah, it's one of the underbelly.
Because James does residency at UH, and they said that they had a thing. It was like, Cleveland Clinic did a walletectomy on this patient.
Wow.
And now they transferred them here. So that's my opinion on Cleveland. But that's like held up as this big success story in the United States, and it's like,
wait a minute, And we, in the DC area, we have Johns Hopkins and we have Georgetown, big names. But I've certainly gone out with my patients, and I'll go to these specialists, and I've had clients internationally who would come too. And being there and seeing all of it, you're like, wait a minute. I shift my role as a physician to becoming an advocate. It's like, no, that's not supposed to happen, so we need to go do this. And there's a lot of people.
That. And they don't have, that's what my father used to do.
Exactly.
He would go and do rounds at the hospital. And, any of his patients from his practice that were in the hospital, he would go and do rounds every morning, every evening. It was like a 40-minute drive to the hospital. Check on, you shouldn't be on this medicine. This is going to interfere with your blood pressure. He knew that stuff about them. Yeah. And I think they would pay him $15 to do that. Yeah. And then they stopped, no, we're not going to pay you anymore. And so now, then they have internists that they're paying $300,000 to replace that.
Yeah.
So it's like, really, did that help financially to not pay the family doctor?
Even then, it's still broken because discharge is where I have the biggest problem. I have to fight for the discharge planning every single time because your father's not a punter. Everybody else I interact with punt, 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 punt.
Oh, it drives me.
They don't. Yeah. I mean, it's like, really? I'm not going to let you punt this.
Yeah.
And you have to hold them to it. And I'm fortunate enough to be independent.
Nobody wants to take responsibility. They don't want the liability, and
Or
it's
they just don't think, what's the point?
yeah.
You know,
My job's done here with I'm the cardiologist, and they're fine. So I don't know.
They're cleared.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, that's because of the insurance companies and the way healthcare has been set up, the economics of it. It's
And training. It's so specialized. James is a neurologist. Like, there's not that many procedures a neurologist does. They do EEGs, they do EMGs, sleep studies.
EEG.
Right. Now, it's so, James is specialized in EEG. He can do EEGs, but he can't do EMGs. He didn't do a stroke fellowship, but he's been a stroke hospitalist for 12 years, but that's not the 1 year. It's just like what is my dad went when there was no emergency room residency. He started an emergency room group to staff hospitals at the hospital he trained at. He was there were two groups. There was one in California in his group, and he ran at one point about 7 hospitals in 3 states. And, I'll hire the doctors, I'll staff them, do the billing, you don't do anything. You don't have to deal with your emergency room. In that time, there was never a lawsuit. Imagine an emergency room without a lawsuit.
Yeah,
Because my dad, if there was ever a problem, if anyone was ever unhappy, he would call them immediately, call the patient, what do you want, what was wrong? He'd talk to the doctor, and he took care of things like that. And so it wasn't fragmented. My dad, did all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And now it's just so you just even it's sub specialties.
Yeah.
And so people don't see the whole person. It's like,
And I think,
I'm just looking at this one little part of you.
And I think that's by design, because that's how they control the system. And when I say they, those who influence, those who own practices, groups, or those who run the hospitals, they're not physicians. It used to be a physician would own a hospital or would own a clinic.
And now it's a bunch of masters in hospital administration.
Healthcare sciences and things like that. Yeah,
Like-
and they've never touched the patient. That's the most infuriating thing.
No.
So when I work in DC, I'm always, invariably I have to go up against managers in clinics or in the hospitals, and I have to navigate my patients around that mess just to get the job done. And it is grueling, and I am essentially on call every day, even while I'm here. But I don't know how else to do it. I would not do it. I would say, honestly, if I couldn't dig in and do what I do now, I would just do something else. I have no idea where. Probably travel.
Yeah.
But
I mean, James feels that pull all the time, and I think that's why he likes hospitalist work, because it's interesting. He's less scrutinized. It's not like you have to see a patient every 20 minutes. It's just
clinic work.
There's a stroke. There's So he's kind of left alone in that way. Doesn't have patients that he follows.
No,
so there's
no
a negative to that. There's
Yeah.
positives and negatives. He would be, I think, really good.
With patients.
Yeah. Patients ask him all the time, do you have a clinic? Can I come back and see you? And it's just whoever's on call. He doesn't have that. But he has such a pull to do other things too. He wants to write music and plays and be with his family. And, so it's, I don't know how you figure out within medicine how to, because I know the hospital work drives him crazy. I know because he's so you're very chill. My cousin Jim is in New Orleans, and he became a doctor because of my dad. He would come visit when he was younger, and my dad encouraged him to go to med school. And he's an amazing. He was in not Grady. Grady's the Atlanta hospital. The public hospital in New Orleans that closed after Katrina.
Oh.
He ran that hospital, and 4 days of no electricity after Katrina, and hand pumping things, and he's
Chill.
Yeah. Like,
is he still there now?
No, you could come in with
Yeah.
Okay, let's get you in here. James would be like, oh my God, you need to see a doctor. Oh my God.
James would stroke you out. Yeah, that's...
So you need to be more like Jim. You need whatever Jim's...
You can't take the person out of it.
You can't. So that part of the hospital work is like makes James kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, are you sure you don't want to do like
something
else? No, I'd get too bored with that. So it's the trade-off.
And,
sort of.
Transition as he gets older as a physician too. Other physicians will come or they'll change the style of practice. Who knows? But you have a lot of physicians, older physicians, selling their practices. A lot of them going into consultancy. Even me as a family physician, I'm replaceable with a PA, a physician assistant, or a nurse practitioner like this. So there's really no point to becoming a family physician anymore, which, I bemoan, but that's just,
Well, when my dad did it, the reason he went into it was there no residency.
Yeah.
He needed to work, he needed to make money. Yeah. And so you did your 1 year internship, and he put his, he was practicing like at 27, had his own practice. Yeah. And now, if you have to do a 3-year residency for family doc, or a 3-year residency for, intern, why would it's too difficult. Yeah. So that alone would change. If they just eliminated the residency, you would have probably a lot more family docs.
Yeah, we'll have those conversations, see what your dad has to say.
And my dad's an osteopath, so he does the manipulation. And,
still.
And he's seen when he started osteopath, they weren't.
They were shunned,
Yeah.
Massively.
Now they're in every state. But back then it was like, oh, you're a quack. And he...
But they do primary care, and some in specialty too. But it's fascinating to see how things change. But we'll continue the story with your father. We'll certainly... he'll be a feature character and have his own episodes, I'm sure. And it'd be great to see that and share that with you. And the idea is that this is a journey that we're going on. We'll come back again, and check in and those things. But anything you can provide digitally, maybe even some old video or photograph, something, and then it might be that as we're going, the editor goes through it, and we're like, there's a good place to put some monologue in here, and maybe I did see a mic downstairs. Maybe you might be able to hook that up and provide some mono over that. We don't know.
Yeah.
So as we continue this series, we're going to be going to different locations around the U.S. and certainly abroad. It's very important for us to be able to share with others kind of what is it really like here in Washington, in Everett, which is north of Seattle. What's the culture? What's the sense of, it's a beautiful place. Obviously people are enjoying healthy lifestyles, but from your perspective, you've jumped around the U.S. What do you think is unique about the Seattle area in terms of health and wellness? And
when we were here, we lived here from 92 to 98 before we moved to Charleston. And I went to an acupuncturist, which I'd never, I'm sure there were some in New York, but it was like not, that was like standard. I think even my insurance covered it, which I was shocked at. And when I was doing pre-med, I for a time wanted to go to Bastyr College, which was College of Naturopath Medicine out here. So I was really researching naturopathy and interested in it, and it definitely is more accepted and out on the West Coast than certainly Ohio, New York, and Charleston would know if I saw him.
Ben we met with here, and I would say very much of what you have here is very different, even in DC, where naturopathy has really been shut down completely. There are only a few who practice it, and even then, it's always a concern that their practices will go under some kind of review by the board. But I think here, there are unique things about this area that, particularly things like addiction, mental health, seasonal affective disorder, all of those things, which I think make it unique too. And I think as a physician would be different challenges here.
I think there's a mentality among, I think they made insurance companies pay for it. I think that changed, people could actually access it and it wasn't so expensive out of pocket. But then you have these institutional like there's no mental health hospitals here. Mental health, it's very much what's the right word? It's a West Coast, like, we can't keep you if you don't want to be kept. We're not going to keep you in an institution. You're fine. Like, it's very individual, like, that has seeped into the culture, you know, the libertarianism, maybe. Not the nanny. I think there's more nanny state kind of mentality and care on on the East Coast. Here, it's like, no, because I'm shocked by it. Like, I'm like, why did they let this kid, you know, this kid with schizophrenia whose mom, like, why'd they just release him without, you know, there was a mother looking for her son who they had released from a hospital of his own you know, he's an adult. And he was, you know, she's like, I don't know, he got on a bus and I don't know where, you know, I'm like, this is terrible. But that's the mentality. It's like you know, you're an adult. You might have problems, but so there's no mental health. The hospitals, like James can't really send people who, you know, they'll come to the hospital and they'll stay there for 3 or 4 days just to, you know, get a break. But I think that's a lot of the homelessness. A lot, you know, there's just not the services that there are on the East Coast. I mean, I've noticed that in a way.
And I think there have been businesses have seized opportunities where they see the almighty dollar, which is, you know, particularly in substance use rehabilitation. We have so many practices, residential programs that bring in people to. And
there might be residential things, but like I'm going to send you to the mental health. Like they close that. You know, there's. So
there's no more funding. Oh yeah.
So they go to the hospital and they get juggled around in the hospital and. And then released, and it doesn't feel like anybody ever really, it's like, that person needs help.
And that's fascinating because we'll be going to other places and internationally too, and their approach to mental health. You know, like when we go to Turkey, that'll be definitely one of the things I want to ask, you know, what do you do with somebody, you know, there's got to be some schizophrenics in Turkey, what do you do with them, right? So it'd be fascinating to explore that. Every place is a little bit different.
Yeah, even, you know, I mean.
Oh, yeah. This is like moving to another country almost.
Right.
Coming over here versus DC, it's like, what?
Right.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Even driving around the traffic, it's like,
drive me crazy.
But if there's DC traffic like this, it'd be worse, a lot worse.
Everybody goes like 60 on the highway.
Yeah.
All 4 lanes across.
Yeah. And that would never happen in DC.
No. Or it's like the carpool lane. It's like, oh, nobody's in the carpool lane. Oh, I can just go over here and like drive leisurely. It's like, get out of the carpool lane.
Yeah, you've experienced that a few times. If you happen to find any of this interesting, or more importantly, if you want to collaborate, check out the link below so that you can send us your comments, any stories you may have, anything, you know, we're happy to entertain it. And this is really about us going on a journey together.